This is Rhett from Marshall GIS here.
Oh, very good. How are you doing today?
Excellent. Yeah.
Well, I hope you're where it's not pouring down rain like it is here.
It's not. It is actually not pouring down rain, but I'm sure if it's raining there, it'll eventually get here. So.
Well, we dialed in just a touch early just to make sure we got through, and that so we didn't have any issues. So.
So is this Chris Gavin?
Gavigan.
Okay.
Yes, and Cindy Kittleson.
Cindy Kittleson. Okay, shop supervisor. So, are you able to see my screen? Okay.
Not yet.
Okay, so you're just on a phone at the moment.
I am on the phone, but I dialed in off my computer.
Okay, there's also a WebEx link if you want to view. I mean, you could be on the phone, but there's also the ability to view it if you click the link as well.
All right, I'll start logging into this and see if I miss anything here.
Okay. Did someone else join?
Yeah, it's Nora and Donna.
Oh, hi, Nora. Hi, Donna. Chris
Hello.
and Cindy are on the line as well here.
Hi.
Hello.
So Nora, I see that you're logged into the WebEx. Can you see the screen okay?
Yeah, I can see everything. We're Dawn and I are sharing my laptop. I can see the user list.
Yeah, I thought we'd start off with just the. Go ahead.
Yep.
This will not let me go into it. It says I need an administrator giving permissions to install Cisco WebEx.
If you hit, there's a temporary run thing.
Yeah, there's a temporary option. So you can either install, I think down below at the bottom, there's a run temporary.
All right, let me give this a whirl, and I found it.
Oh, good.
Did someone else join?
Jay Flory with Marshall joining.
Oh, hey, Jay. So once everybody joined, we'll just do quick introductions, and then we'll get started here.
Okay, we're expecting at least Larry from Transit as well.
Okay.
I don't know if I told people to give themselves extra time just because this is kind of weird, so I think an hour is plenty to go through this anyway.
Okay.
So it's okay if we're a little late.
So we're going to record this as well, so just so you can have it as a backup.
Okay. Did it work, Chris?
It just popped up the screen, audio and video connection, but it looks like I have your screen.
Okay,
Yes,
I don't need to see your face in this stuff.
Oh, really? You kind of
Just kidding. No, it scares me when it shows your people's face because it showed mine, and I was like, no, close. I don't want that. A lot of people have little, like, things to block their camera on their computer, I've noticed.
Mine's pointing to the ceiling, so.
Oh, yeah.
I keep mine pointed at the corner of the wall in the office.
Nice.
Well, I've actually have it up. I've got the web page come up, and I see all the users and stuff on there. Is there a trick way I can make this bigger from my end or not?
Yeah. So what you can do is there's two options. There's a drop-down view menu where you can do full screen, or in the window itself, if you go to the upper right-hand corner, there's an arrow up. It'll make it full screen that way as well.
There we go. Got it.
So
I guess we're waiting on Larry.
We can get started with fleet-related items, and then Chris and Cindy can drop off, and Larry can finish up with his group.
Okay, so just get started. So this is the list that you provided, Nora, with the 42 users here, and along with the last one. Joseph was the last one that was sent. So we took this and added these users into username is again, the name that's going to be used to log in to, and then you can see there's email addresses, for example, and you can see the total number here. And if I'll just pick on, we can just do, so I can just do a quick query here. Pick yours to give you an example. Right click and edit this. This will bring up information on, you know, it's not showing the password, but there is actually a password. I sent you an email on that. So there's that password, and during the training, we'll show how people can go in and change their passwords. So every user type is an operator. So everyone that's brought into the system is an operator. There's this basic information. We can add custom fields on the user, but these are the core fields. There's a role here. Typically, there's just one role, probably the KC super administrator, but there's also this fleet operator, which probably can be unchecked. And then you can set up basically what are called tags for users. Typically, all users fall into an all users tag, but then there's individual groups that that you may want, for example, reporting options down to individual groups. But maybe someone that's a super user wants to see all the users, so that's why there's that all users tag there. Just to show you up here under admin, so each, let me actually clear this so it goes back to all of them again. So there's users, and if you notice, there's these are views. So each one of these views have the specific vehicle groupings, so based on the role, so if we go into the role section, the roles have ability to see certain views. Looks like Cindy just joined the WebEx here.
Cindy Sattler.
So
there's two Cindys.
I just saw a little screen up here that said Cindy joined.
And Cindy's here with me, Nora.
Oh, I think.
Cindy.
Hello. Yeah, it's Cindy Sattler.
Yeah. I didn't know if you were on this. I just want to make sure everyone knows there's two Cindy.
Sorry, it took me a while to get WebEx to launch.
No problem, Cindy. So we're just going over, wanting to have folks who are going to be in administrator type roles with a lot of groups be able to see a little preview before the pilot started, because, you know, we may want to set it up in a specific way. So I wanted, they kind of took a stab at the information I provided them, but I wanted transit and fleet in particular to have a look at it before we went into the trainings.
All right.
So for example, so there's fleet administrator, fleet operator role. The fleet administrator has, for example, more editing than the fleet operator. Same thing down here with this transit administrator versus transit operator. So it looks like Larry is joining the meeting. So maybe I should wait just a second while he joins the phone. So that was Larry. Okay.
So Larry and Cindy, who both just dialed in, are with our transit group, and they're on the data management side, so they will probably be doing some of this maybe. So they want to be able to see, they'll be administrators.
Okay. So, and these roles again correspond to, if we come over here, to the departments as well as who can see what. So there's this role of administrator versus operator tie, and then there's this node of who can see what within those groups. So that's how roles, basically roles define the permissions of what users can see or edit. And so if we, so Larry, did you just join?
Yes, I did. Can you hear me?
Yes. I saw a message come up with your name. So yeah, we're just going over some of the users and permission settings here, and maybe since we have everybody in the call now, we could do some quick introductions. My name is Rhett Harmon. I'm the Service Delivery Manager, but the project manager on this project. And I'll let Jay introduce himself.
I'm Jay Flory. I'm lead developer with Marshall, and I will be doing the initial training for the pilot at the end of this month. So you'll see me up in Renton.
I'm Nora. Everyone knows me. I'm Donna Buzar. I'm the project manager from the KCIT department.
And you got Chris Gavigan here with Fleet.
Cindy Kittleson with Fleet.
Cindy Sattler with Vehicle Maintenance Data Management.
Larry Swersler also with data management in transit.
Okay, all right, great. Well, so just to go back real quick, so just for those that joined, we imported all the users based on a spreadsheet that was provided to us. So all of the users, emails, departments, roles, and along with these notes helped us determine who can see what and the various groupings. And so once these were imported or brought into the system as users, then what we do is we create roles based on those, and the users fall into these various roles. So if we just take, let's just take Transit Administrator as an example here. So, there's a basic name and then the description, which users fall into that role. So, so I've got Cindy and David there, and then the privileges. So privileges, you have the ability to do certain things in the privileges. So, for example, you can, as a transit administrator, you have the ability to edit basically the vehicle name, vehicle information that's related to transit and the transit users, for example. The data that you're reading is basically you can read yourself, and you can also read the transit vehicles and the transit users. So when it says me here, that means if you're on a mobile phone, for example, you could see your location on a mobile phone. That's what when you see that little me, for example. You have, as an administrator, you have most of the rights to be able to do certain types of editing. You're viewing the transit view. So transit here, specific transit information. And so this is where the majority of the permissions are set up. And if we compare that to the transit operator, so transit operator, here are the 3 users. So as these roles, they basically, as an administrator, you have all the rights. You have all the rights that one of these operators have, and one of the single users. So you don't have to have 2 roles as a user. Basically, you just have to have one, because you have all the rights that everyone underneath you have in that role. Same thing with a fleet administrator. You have all the rights that the fleet operator have, plus more. So looking at the transit operator here, again, these are the 3 that were in the spreadsheet that are associated with that. And then if we go into the privileges, there's no editing, for example, no editing privileges. The reading is, of course, they can see themselves in the transit vehicles. They can't see the transit users, but they can just see the vehicles. Everything that's in on these operator roles is read-only. So again, the view, so you're just seeing the transit view here. So as an example, when they log in as a transit operator, what they're going to see is basically these 6 vehicles right here only once they log in.
So I think part of this, Rhett, I think this is all helpful. Part of it is just to make sure that what you have in there is what these folks are expecting.
Okay.
Like validating within transit administrator and transit operator, and then discussing, just for Larry and Cindy, I spoke with Tom, and this is definitely open for discussion, about having the folks who are in each group only see those in that group. So right now the transit is set up so they only see the vehicle if there's only one in that group. So that's sort of what Tom was envisioning, but if you guys have a different strategy or plan, please let us know. Just because their groups will be bigger than one vehicle. Right now they're only one.
So the group that says Transit Operator EXA 527, there's just one user in that group. Do you know who
there's
that?
one vehicle, but there's maybe many users. Like, I think there's a few different users that can only see just that, if that's their group.
I see.
Does that make
So I see, because I see. So operations has that one vehicle, so they can only see that one vehicle.
Yeah. And
I'm
if there
not sure
are
that's
need,
a great test.
yeah. So this is all open for discussion, and that's why I wanted everyone to be able to see it before we went to the people with it.
So I don't know if this question is for Marshall or for Larry, who's in our group, but Transit only has 6 vehicles in the test, and so it seems like one of the things that we want these users to do is actually see what the data looks like on the screen. And if they only see one vehicle, does that really give them a representation of what they're going to see once we add all of their vehicles? Even though there's going to be vehicles on the map that don't belong to them, wouldn't that better inform them of what the software can do and what it looks like when there's multiple vehicles?
That's totally up to Transit. That's absolutely up to you.
Okay. So how is Fleet doing it? Are you guys, or are the other sections?
What we're doing, we have some sense, I mean, we have the sheriff's office participating, so, you know, there's a potentially sensitive. What we're doing is setting it up for the department to only see their own department.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so we could set it up for all of Transit to see all of Transit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Vehicles.
It's just up to you on what one works in this pilot, and then as we're getting more familiar with it and getting into the implementation, how that would change and be managed and set up, if it would change.
So what you could do is, for example, this transit operator can see all of the transit. So if you notice here, it says transit vehicles only. So this role right here, right now, the way it's set up based on the spreadsheet is Kevin and Sandy can only see EXA 527, and what you could do is essentially we could leave these roles in here, and you could just, so if we bring up this EXA 527 and look at the users that are in this role, you could easily bring them over into you could easily just tag them as a user in the transit operator so that they could see it, and then you could always switch them back later.
So these names of these users, the transit operator EXA 527, I mean, that's not something that we're stuck with. Obviously, it looks like that one is like for one of the operations bases. And we could change that to say Transit Atlantic Base or something to make it make more sense
Yeah, you could
once
change
we're
it.
live.
It's just the
I
way,
mean,
at least the
not for the
way.
test.
Yeah, you could
change it to whatever you want.
Yeah, you could
Okay.
change the name to whatever you want. It's just in this details. It's just a description,
Okay.
so that can be
Okay.
modified.
Because again, I think I'm stuck on kind of the weeds here, but Larry, I think the term transit operator won't work for us since we actually have literally a job class called transit operators.
Right.
So it's just going to cause confusion as
I
to
think
what
those
these
roles
users do.
are really, I mean, maybe it's like operations instead of operator. It's more
Right.
like the work
So
group instead
yeah,
of
if we
the
have
job classification.
right, and so I think yeah, the role I get that in it's almost the operator has viewing rights and the administrator has edit rights. Is that right?
For the most part, yes.
And then for the and then the other privileges are geared towards which vehicles can people see, and we absolutely agree that within each group, you know, if a certain supervisor is responsible for these 6 vehicles, that's the 6 vehicles he or she is going to want to see. We don't want them to see all 750 vehicles that are owned and on the road by transit. But because of the test, they only have 1 vehicle in the test. It doesn't seem like it gives enough of a sense of what it's going to look like once they have all their vehicles in the test, or all their vehicles, is what I'm kind of struggling with.
If I can just chime in here to clarify something, because we had this discussion ourselves internally. Is it that you want to limit the number of vehicles that a supervisor sees or an operator sees, or is it that you want to restrict? Because we have several different ways of setting this up. One, we give you a view that shows only the vehicles you care about, but if you want to see another vehicle, you can. The other way we can set it up is we can set it up that you only see the vehicles you care about and you can never see any of the other vehicles, which is a much more restrictive setup. So that should be clear from the start so we don't frustrate people.
So
that difference, I think, should be clear.
And I think that okay, so and I think for us in transit, we need our end users to help us make some of those decisions. So for the test,
you know, we can do it either way. It's just a matter of you know how much you want to restrict the ability of people to see what other people are doing. And that, as you mentioned earlier, that's going to become more of an issue, I think, with the sheriff's vehicles than with others.
Okay, so can I recap? Because I think I understand. So what I'm hearing is during the pilot, transit operators would like to see all 6 of the vehicles. During full implementation, they will be by section, as defined by transit. So operations section, whatever, or this base section, they'll be able to provide that information on how they want their hierarchy organized. But during the pilot, since it's a small amount of vehicles, those that we've had added as users should see all of them for now.
Right, and that one of the goals of our pilot is to reach out to the end users that are taking part and ask them what is going to be useful for you. What are you going to need to see? Because I think there's going to be several tiers of viewing, because there's different responsibilities. And so it sounds like there's basically 3 tiers of levels. There's a transit administrator with more privileges. Then there's a transit operator and a transit operator that's even more limited to certain vehicles. I think without talking to the end users and how they utilize their vehicles. For instance, facilities, um, the vehicle might stay with the employee, and if the employee is moved to a different base, that's a lot of administrative changes to keep changing a vehicle from base to base. So base level might not make sense for them. They might just have one view for all of their vehicles. For operations and vehicle maintenance, that might be another wall. I don't know that Larry and I and Tom should make those decisions for all of transit. I think we need the test in order to make those determinations as to what roles different people should have.
If I may, I think, this is Chris, I think that the understanding being, I think that what you're saying, right, if I understand you correctly, is that you're wanting us to know that if each group can, if transit can see parks, if parks can see roads, those are going to be defined as restricted to each work unit, work group.
No. I'm talking about totally within transit. I don't think transit needs to see anything going on with parks or roads or the sheriff's department. Those are separate departments or separate sections. Within transit alone, we have.
No, I know, Cindy, and I understood that, but in your administrative roles, when we define this, if I understood all this correctly, and this is what my past history has been with this, is that these roles will be determined by the administrator. Will be able to give you as much span whoever you want to see it, not see it, and that will be what the administrator will be able to do within transit's group. Is that correct, Brett?
Yes, and it's already set up to do that. So in other words, everything, the transit administrator only sees transit, and the transit operator only sees transit, and down to those levels. It's just the administrator has the ability to edit some of those things within the transit component, so to speak.
And Cindy, it would be whatever vehicles, if you wanted Tom to see all the vehicles being in maintenance, he could see all of them. Yet if you wanted EFO only to see a small group, the administrator will dictate that and fix that in the system. Does that make sense?
But I totally agree that it is not necessarily all figured out yet because we haven't used it. So we have more clear lines because we have separate agencies. Within your own agency, you'll have to come up with a hierarchy that works for you that we aren't expecting you to know right now.
Okay.
So
and we could have
sorry, if you want to just have, if Rhett can just change all the transit users to see all the transit vehicles in the pilot, and then you use that as a, like you're saying, as an opportunity to define what groups you want to be making.
Yeah, that's not a problem to do that. So I will put that as a.
And I think for the pilot, transit needs more than just me as an administrator.
So Tom is as well. And I think Joseph, I have to look. He keeps sending me new ones, and I don't have it in my head. But I know Cindy is, and you guys can delegate if you want Larry to be one as well. But I know Tom is, and you are for sure. Cindy. And so within that, we would just want to make sure when we communicate, when you're doing your communication with your group, with transit, just say, this is what it looks like for now, and we're open to input on what ones you want to see and not see, and maybe there's synergy between two groups that help each other, and they want to have a view that they see both. There's all kinds of ways you could do it.
And then in terms of training for how to use the software, is that for whether you're an operator or an administrator, is that on us to do, or is that?
We'll be providing that training the last week of March. I think we've got it scheduled for the 29th as the initial training.
Yeah, so we are waiting on getting the finalized training plan before we broadly communicate that date, but what we're doing now is targeting the 27th for technicians installation and shop administrators, so those who are going to be adding and removing vehicles from the system, and then on the 29th would be general users and then administrators who would be adding or removing users from the system.
Is that going to be a Skype meeting or an in-person meeting?
It will be both. Either option. We'll be recording it also. I like to record them so we can.
Okay, so the
watch them later.
27th sounds like it's for, you said it's the technicians who are adding and basically commissioning new vehicles.
Right.
Okay. And the 29th.
Well, and also the tech admins that support them.
Yeah. So, and operations managers that are in the
So
shops, like Chris.
who are these
and
tech
others.
admins that support them? What does that mean?
So in our case, we have like a planner scheduler person that works in the shop office and has responsibility over work orders. So if there's somebody like that in VM that does write work orders. I talked to Tom, and he mentioned JR himself and one other technician.
Yeah, their admin staff is turning over and it's going to be an SDA, so I don't think we'd start there, but a lead sounds like it would make more sense. So I'll talk to Tom about that.
Okay, and then you or Larry are both welcome to dial into that one if you're interested as well.
Larry, I think it'd be a good idea if you could invite Larry. I'll be on vacation that day, so I won't be able to.
Okay.
But Larry, I think it'd be a good idea if you're available on the 27th. Yeah, so you haven't sent invitations to any
I'm
of these.
checking my.
That's true. That is true. We're waiting on finalizing the times, but I've kind of given in the project meetings just a heads up on those are the tentative dates. Okay, so we'll make that change with transit, or Red will make that change, and then it'll just be one of our action items of many to define what that hierarchy is, and then making sure you have all the right users in the pilot. We'll be able to start adding them, right, Rhett? Once we have administrator privileges, we won't need to ask you to do it?
Correct. You'll be able to add users as well.
Good practice. Yeah.
One question I do have, Nora, on fleet. So with fleet, I'm assuming because you're in fleet, you want to deal with all the vehicles. Is that a correct assumption? In terms of you want to be able to know when maintenance needs to be done on the vehicles and so forth. Is that a correct assumption?
So Chris, you want to speak to that? What your needs are?
Yeah. Yeah, well, we would be access to all of them just for maintenance and whatnot, and then tracking for securities and other things. So yes, it would be.
Okay.
But at the same time, would want the ability to break it out into sections to look for different vehicles if we needed them for maintenance or repair.
Okay. So what we have is there's a view called vehicles, which is all vehicles. What I could do too is I didn't know if it wanted to be simple for you. When you log in, you just go to all vehicles. But what I could do is I could check. So if we go down to view, for example, here. So there's read views. Basically, that shows all the vehicles in one view. But I can also check all of these other views so that you could just go to the specific view, like go to roads view or solid waste view or transit view, if that would be helpful.
That would be perfect. That's actually what we had discussed early on. So yes, that would be fine.
Yeah, and then just note that we don't need to see airport or transit.
Oh, you don't?
You can check. No.
Okay. Water. Okay.
Yeah. So I just want to make sure for the best use of time, does Cindy and Larry have any more questions related to transit? Just want to make sure you have your time back if you need it.
No, I think I can talk to Tom about, I mean, as far as implementation though, the equipment has to get put on these vehicles, and that's.
Yes, and the idea would be that they would get the devices on the 27th, and then I mentioned to Tom that as soon as possible, at least getting one in the system. So while we're doing the training, they can at least see one of them moving around. But I said if possible, if he could just pre-schedule all those vehicles to get installations in that week, then it'd be beneficial for the training and also just getting started. So I've mentioned that, but you may want to.
But the training is on the the training for him is on the 27th, and he'll get the devices. So if he can get one or two installed by the
Yeah.
29th. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. That's kind of the intention.
Okay,
And
then
that wouldn't be an issue.
I'm wondering at this point in time, I'm guessing that there's not a user of the actual vehicle being added in terms of identifying who's actually driving the vehicle, but that will be in the.
Not. There's not currently that at all.
Is that part of the scope of the eventual project?
If you have
still?
assigned vehicles, you can assign them a name, right? Right, like you could say this is assigned to.
So we could add there's some out of the box fields, or we could add a custom field as a driver, and then we could assign the name of the driver and then add that column here so you could see the driver, for example.
Right, but out of our 750-ish vehicles, we have maybe 6 that are assigned to a driver. Most of ours are fleet vehicles. So we're trying to, will we know who's driving the vehicle when it's a fleet vehicle, when it's a pool vehicle?
That would be if you were going to do the, which is not currently in the scope of this, but you could definitely do it later on, is to do the driver ID, which is what Sound Transit.
Yeah, that capability is, so the devices we're going to provide you will, you could add that on as an additional item. The good news is the hardware we're providing you is capable of that. It's just adding the reader and basically the RFID button to be able to assign to each user. But so that's definitely available down the road. And then what you could do is a note, similar to how you have views for the vehicles, views for the users, you could also have, there's a default driver's view where you could also see based on the driver, and then of course you can add the driver column here. So the framework is all there, so to speak, to do that. It's just a matter of when that happens or implements down the road.
And when you say RFID for each user, does that mean that they use their current KCIT badge, or they'd have to be issued a separate tap?
So we could do, I guess, when we scope that out, we could go either route. So we have some customers that are using their employee badge, which is a different reader technology, or we can provide you what, for example, Sound Transit has, where we provide a key fob and a reader, and they could put that on their, on the keychain or whatever that they touch. So either we could go either route on that, but we just would have to scope out which direction the county would like to take.
Okay, and Nora, the fleet has no intention of going that direction. You guys don't need to know who's driving a vehicle?
Currently, right now, we're not pursuing that because we're trying to get this all, I think, just implemented. For our dispatch vehicles, which are our main pools, we have a way of knowing that with our reservation system, but other groups are going to be interested in it, like just inherently, so we'll come up with a county approach to it, and I would assume we don't want more equipment, so I would assume it would probably be targeted towards existing things like the badge we already have. But I think with our customers, if Chris can maybe add in, our customers may want that. But for fleets, from fleet's perspective, we're not going to be doing it on our dispatch vehicles. So, but it is something that people are interested in, I think.
Okay, because I this was quite a while ago, but I thought there was already a King County-wide somebody working with labor relations to address any labor contract concerns. Is that not then?
That's happening.
Oh, that is.
Yeah,
okay.
That's happening. I actually talked to David Topaz last week, and I can fill you in offline about that.
Okay, great.
All righty. Well, I just want to make sure you are good, and then I want to spend the last few minutes talking about fleet, just because of all our different customers. But I just wanted to give you an opportunity to see, and I'm glad we did because I think it's good, good feedback for the Marshall team and us. because we have no idea exactly what we're doing yet. But I think also setting expectations with the people who are in the pilot is important too. Like, this is what you're going to see, and this is what we need from you, and this is the evaluation and stuff like that. So we can talk more later.
Okay.
And so just as an action item from this meeting is that I will, the users that were assigned to these individual, just to see these individual vehicles, I'm going to move them into the transit operator so that they can see these, all 6 of these, at least for the pilot. That's what I heard.
Yeah, Larry, do you think I should check with Tom first, or do you think that's a good idea?
I mean, so ideally we would want them to be able to see both, but if we have to choose one, I say go with the more inclusive, and we can just tell them, hey, we can filter this down so that you can only see your unit too.
So
I
they
think
can do both. They could do both. So with both, I could leave them in this individual one, but I could also assign them to this one as well, so they could be able to see all or.
And so do they log in differently, or do they just switch their view?
No, yeah, they don't have to log in differently. It's just a matter of basically how I set it up or tag them in here. So it's just a matter of basically they're already in this one. I just have to add them to this one right here.
So, but how would they choose their view? Is it complicated for them to choose a view, or is it just is there a view button that they just change?
So actually, I mean, if you want them to only be able to see this one and then this one, I would have to actually create a view. Right now it's a tag so that they can when they log in, they're coming into this view right now, but they're only seeing this particular vehicle. But I could create a view if you just wanted a specific view for them only to see that vehicle. But right now it's basically this concept of a tag, which again we're going to cover in the administrative side. So if I go under admin tag and I pick this XA, so right now this is only associated with this. So when they log, just from an ease of management, this is a lot easier because they still are just working within the transit view. But when they log in, all they see is this vehicle. But if you want them to see more vehicles, then I would just basically add them to the transit role where they could see more options. So,
I think I think it's just like up in the left-hand corner, Cindy, the view, and then they could create a operations view or whatever the name might be. And if you wanted to name them instead of the EX, if it makes more sense, if you wanted to rename them, you could have, they could only see operations, or they could click and see all transit. Up in that, are you looking at the WebEx version, or are you just phone?
No, but he lost me, so I think
Yeah.
I don't understand the answer, so I'm
I guess on the
not sure I can even rephrase the question.
So do you want to see 2 different views for just one where they're just seeing the one vehicle and then they want to switch over to seeing all, or do you just
So
want
that's
them
my
to be
question: is how would they switch over if they had the option of switching over? How complicated is it to switch over?
It's not complicated. We would just need to create another view for them just to see both. So in other words, to see all or just the one.
And so then that would appear up in the corner of transit.
Yeah,
There'd be one
so it'd be
called
right
transit
here
all, and then
with another name. So right now when they log in, they're just going to see transit, but we could have another name for them to see as another option, whether it be EXA 527 or a different name that you want.
I think that's what I was trying to say. I'm sorry. I'm like hearing both and trying to make it make sense. But I think it's
well,
pretty
that seems
simple.
like a lot of work, so I just leave it the way it is. I don't care. It's fine. We'll just deal.
So just to be able to let them see all the vehicles, I can move them into this operator so they can see all 6.
You know what? Just leave them the way they are. I'll talk
Okay.
to Tom. It sounds like this is a lot of work for you, so I don't want to go through that.
It's not, but that's okay. let me know either way. It's really not that much work, so.
And Cindy, maybe perhaps we could have Rhett just do that and then maybe show you at another time when you and Tom and Larry can all call in together.
Sure. I'll talk to Tom and see what he wants to do.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Okay, and all of this is flexible, and once we hopefully learn how to do it, it won't seem as onerous, and I think it'll be pretty adaptable to whatever your needs are, and we'll make it work. So.
Yeah, and so the nice thing too is we can these base roles are already set up, and you can essentially create a copy of these and then refine the permissions. So if there's something between maybe an administrator and an operator, it's really simple to create a new one, rename it, and then slightly modify the permissions to your, if you need something a little bit in between where they need to see more, do more within the transit group.
Okay. Thank you, Rhett. Well, Cindy and Larry, thank you for calling in, and hopefully we can get it all figured out. And then I think it's good to do this before we bring in the users, though, so I think this is a good plan. And we'll keep you up to date. Let us know what Tom decides and you decide with him. So.
Okay, great. I will do that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
And I'm just trying to figure out how to log off.
Oh, yeah, it's kind of funky.
It's going to take me a second. So, oh, here we go. There's a little phone thing. All right. Thank you so much. Bye.
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 Is Chris still there?
Yes.
Yeah. Hi, Chris. Sorry about that.
Hello.
So for fleet, I wanted to make sure we have this right. And I wanted to also make sure transit had it right, but I didn't totally understand the differences in what they were doing, but that's okay. We can do it. So for fleet, you need to see all of the vehicles in fleet plus solid waste. So the way I've defined the spreadsheet, I've tried to tag it so that you could see both. Like that it was a fleet vehicle, like a fleet tag, and it's also an agency. So Chris, Cindy, and Isaac, and Casey need to be able to see. Is there anybody else you want, like Ken or something, or are you not doing that yet?
Actually, we were just chatting here in between it. With what we're doing here, it might not be a bad idea to put Marie on that as well. Okay. I'll send you that later, Rhett, on any changes. No worries. So could you kind of demonstrate a little bit about how that would look for Chris? Like, I think he's interested in having a view that's all of fleet, and then maybe a view of fleet plus solid waste. I don't know, Chris, do you have any sort of preference on how that's set up in the pilot? Well, I would just leave it like that in the pilot. And at the end of the day, Nora, when we get done with this, it'll be a thing to where I want to bust them down into departments. And I think it's just setting up. If I understand this, it looks the same as what I've seen before. It's if I set up preferences in the look at this, if I'm right, let me know if I'm missing this, Rhett. But I should be able to take and just drop parks off and drop all the different ones off if I want. Look at different ones as I go, just setting up my permissions correctly. Is that right?
Yeah.
Or my view, I guess.
So yeah, basically when you log in and let's see, let's just switch over here. I'm just going to show you what it's going to look like when you log in, just so you. Okay, so this was all right. So Chris, right here. Let me just grab your name. I'm going to log out. I'm going to paste your name in here. So vehicles, so, all right, looks like I need to make a slight modification. So this is how we had it set up before, where it was vehicles and all vehicles. So, let me log out and log back in and make.
But I think in general, we're all on the same page of how it will be set up for fleet. I think transit has some figuring out to do of how they want to do it. But just keeping a distinction of, we don't need to see transit or the airport at all. And it needs to be clearly set up that way, because there will be concerns about that. But, and making sure it's simple and easy. And I think it is simple to change the view. I think she was just getting confused with, when you're watching the screen, it can see a lot of things happening. So was probably just a little.
And I was surprised because she was in all that training, but that's all right. What, the one thing is, I don't know, I'm just looking at some of this, but the one that we got to be real careful of with reviews is the sheriff.
Who has access?
Who has access to that, Nora?
Sorry, can you access to what?
I says, you know, we have that concern, but we need to see the sheriff's vehicles for what we're doing for maintenance, so we need to be real careful who has permissions to see them.
Right, that's what I was trying to say, is like, no, we're not going to open up our whole pilot to all of fleet, because we don't want the sheriffs or other concerns. But in fleet, we should be able to see them, but not parks seeing sheriff or others. And then within transit, there will be some, you know, adding of those metro vehicles that they have, and some special sheriff group that we'll make.
But the only one that has anything that has a security issue at all for seeing something is just the sheriff.
Mm-hmm. The rest is kind of like,
it doesn't matter right now. This pilot is kind of territorial.
Yeah. So, and I think, I mean, from Chris, from your perspective on like having Dawn and others, like they're just going to want to see parks, right?
Yes, but you know, at the end of the day, yes, they do. But I wouldn't care if they seen the rest of them to see how some of their stuff functions and whatnot. If it helps them to understand the system better, I see no harm in that whatsoever.
Okay.
I mean, and that's just the only one that they shouldn't see is the sheriff, like I said. But seeing roads and seeing the other ones, I think it might help Rhett and your group too. I'm just thinking out loud here, but it may help them to understand the system better, what other folks have got, what they're doing, and make it simpler for them to understand. It might help us down the road when we implement the rest of it. That's just a thought, but. And I don't care either way, Nora. I don't see any harm in it. So.
Okay.
I just don't want to create a lot of work for Marshall. Just they need to tell us what is simple and whatnot, but it may be to everybody's benefit.
Yeah, so the beauty of this is it's very flexible in terms of, I mean, there's all these default roles which then define what you can see, but we can create sort of hybrids of roles that can see again multiple vehicles or multiple groups depending on the setup. But the fleet, basically the fleet, the plan was, or at least based on what I was seeing, is that you're going to see, by default, you're going to see the vehicle view, which is all, but then you'll also be able to hit this drop down and just go to solid waste or go to you know, wastewater and see those specific ones as well. And then you can always do a search here for either a vehicle name or equipment or anything that's on the vehicle, and it'll come up as well. So if you have, for example, in the description Ford F-150, you can search here and it'll bring up all the Ford 150s, or you know, you can just do EW here and it'll find whatever you enter there. But there's multiple ways to do that, and again, based on the permissions, other users are not going to be able to see other vehicles based on the permissions, and we'll make sure of that. But you can tell us again once we get into the training and the administrative training how how tight you want to do this and how, you know, what specifically, who can see what, but this is at least, this is not set in stone. This was just based on the spreadsheet that we used to initially create this, but we can modify it once we get in here. So, but in terms of the fleet administrator, you should be able to see all vehicles or the individual groups, basically. So.
Okay, and I think that was the intention was just so we could understand how it was set up, so we start, you know, communicating with the customers and understanding the user training and how it's gonna go. So, and I'm glad that I did, because I think it got some questions going for transit, and that's good. And I think also understanding that, you know, I think it's good to have different views and make it quick and easy for people. So all of it's good.
Yeah, and part of the administrative training we're going to provide you is getting more in depth into how to do this, how to set this up. So that's, when we get into the administrative training, we'll show you how these all relate, roles, tags, setting up views, adding users, and how all that works. So at least that's this is sort of a quick and dirty to show you this, how the roles are set up, but we're going to get into it in a lot more in depth in the administrative training for sure.
Yeah. Chris, was this helpful or more confusing? Just for my feedback.
No, it wasn't that. Nothing. It's fine. It was what I thought it was. So.
Okay. Well, I think we have an idea of what it should look like, and then for we can have a discussion about if we want to expand the groups for the fleet customers. If that makes sense, we can talk about that later. And then for transit, they'll get back to me on what they want. But I think it is good for everyone to understand what their expectation is and see what it looks like before everyone's trained, kind of.
Yeah,
So.
and I can provide you, Nora, I can provide you the URL. You can go in and start to look at it if you'd like. That would also help. So we're of course, you may see some vehicles moving around here in Boise because we're doing some testing with the vehicles, but we can provide you with the web link to look at it for yourself if you'd like.
I'm not ready yet.
Okay.
I'm not mentally there yet, but maybe
Okay.
Chris wants to. I'm not mentally there yet.
I'm actually good. I'm used to this. I'm looking forward to us getting this going. This is great.
Well, I'm glad you're excited.
Alrighty.
We're excited too. So.
Okay, yeah.
All right.
This is the fun part, right? Bringing it to life.
So again, sort of circling back, it sounded to me that Cindy didn't want me to change anything, so I'll just wait to hear from you if you do want me to change anything. I can do that.
Yeah,
but,
Donna will let you know if they provide us any changes.
Okay.
And you know, as we're going, we can always change it too, right? I mean, it doesn't have to be done right now.
Oh, exactly. Yes. Yeah. You can change and swap users into different places as we go along. So again, this is really just set up based on the spreadsheet, and it can be modified if down the road. So
great. All righty. Well, thank you for your
welcome.
time.
All right.
And I saw we got an email about a training plan, so I will be looking at that. And we'll talk more later on this week, and then we'll get back to you. I have a few changes I want to make already, just to the roles and stuff, but I'll consolidate it all into one request.
Okay. All right. All right. Thanks, Nora.
Thank you.
And thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
And everyone else
Thanks,
that's
everyone.
online.
Appreciate the
Bye.
feedback. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mom. Thank you.
Bye.